The New York City Philanthropy Gala was an event like no other, an extravagant gathering of power and influence, where billionaires, politicians, media moguls, and socialites convened beneath the shimmering glow of chandelier-lit ceilings. A night dedicated to charity, diplomacy, and prestige. But for one man, it was something entirely different. For Ryan Keller, this was meant to be his moment. A senior journalist for the New Standard, Keller had built his career on calculated takedowns, particularly targeting conservative women who defied the media's expectations. His strategy was straightforward. Corner them, catch them off guard, twist their words, and let the headlines do the rest. And tonight, he had his most significant target yet, Melania Trump. The plan had been meticulously crafted. 3 hidden cameras, a social media team ready for real-time updates, a pre-written hashtag, #MelaniaTakedown, set to trend before the night concluded. He could already envision the headlines, the viral clips, the self-congratulatory think pieces that would follow. All he needed was the footage. The moment Melania and Barron Trump entered the ballroom, they commanded attention. Their presence, effortless yet undeniable, exuded the kind of grace that had long distinguished them. Melania navigated through the sea of elites with the poise of a woman who had spent years under the world's scrutiny and had long since mastered the art of composure. Beside her, Barron loomed over the crowd, his quiet confidence a stark contrast to the usual airs of privilege. But Keller didn't care about any of that. He sought a reaction. He craved something that could be spun, edited, distorted, transformed into a viral moment of humiliation. What he didn't anticipate was Barron Trump. As Melania exchanged warm greetings with foreign dignitaries and high-profile guests, Keller spotted his opportunity. He smoothed his jacket, adjusted his rehearsed smile, and pressed live on his phone, broadcasting to thousands of eager viewers. He approached, his voice slick with performative politeness. "Mrs. Trump," he began, angling the phone for maximum effect. "As someone who's benefited from America's opportunities, how do you respond to accusations that you've pulled up the ladder behind you?" A calculated question. The room tensed. Conversation slowed. Heads turned. Keller had cast the bait. Melania, ever composed, regarded him with an unreadable expression. A moment of silence stretched between them, just long enough for the tension to escalate. But before she could respond, Barron Trump stepped forward. The shift was instantaneous. At 6 feet 7 inches, Barron towered over Keller's slight 5 feet 8 inches frame. He didn't need to utter a word for the entire balance of power to shift. The air itself seemed to transform, a charged energy spreading through the ballroom. Keller, despite himself, instinctively took a half step back. He noticed the movement and forced himself to stand his ground, clearing his throat. "I'm conducting an interview with your mother," he said, though his voice was a pitch higher than intended. Barron smiled. But it wasn't just a smile. It was knowing, amused, the kind of smile that sent a cold twist through Keller's gut. The crowd was watching now. Phones had emerged, cameras recording. The tables had turned, and Keller was acutely aware of it. Barron's voice resonated through the hushed ballroom. "Interesting approach to journalism," he said, casually slipping his phone from his pocket, which only heightened the tension of the moment. "Let me pull up something from your Twitter last week." The screen, bright and unmistakable, reflected in Keller's widened eyes. There for all to see was one of Keller's own tweets, a post mocking conservative women, branding them traitors to their gender. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. Barron tilted his head, his expression cool, but his words were razor sharp. "Tell me," he said smoothly, "do you always disguise your misogyny as progressive values, or is that just for special occasions?" Laughter, sharp and unexpected, erupted from the crowd. Keller's face flushed. His grip on his phone tightened. He scrambled for control, turning back toward Melania. "Your son's interruption proves my point about privilege," he stammered. Barron's expression remained unchanged. "Oh, you mean like your privilege?" he said, holding up his screen again. A second tweet. This one, a snide remark Keller had posted about immigrant accents. Yet this was the same Keller who had branded himself as a diversity advocate. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. Camera flashes popped. A few guests exchanged glances. The momentum had shifted against him, and he knew it. Keller's face glistened under the harsh studio lights. The air around him felt suffocating. "This is about your mother's role in," he began, his voice desperate, reaching for something, anything to regain his footing. Barron didn't let him finish. "My mother's role?" he repeated, stepping forward again, closing the distance. And just like that, whatever remained of Keller's bravado vanished. Because for all his planning, all his hidden cameras, all his pre-scripted hashtags and viral ambitions, he had underestimated the one thing he couldn't manipulate: reality. And now he was living in it. Barron tilted his head slightly, letting the moment stretch, letting the silence carry the weight of his next words. "You mean the multilingual immigrant entrepreneur who has raised millions for children's charities?" The question wasn't really a question. It was a statement, one that cut through the air with precision, slicing away at whatever semblance of composure Ryan Keller had left. Or did your research team miss those facts while they were crafting hit pieces? The ballroom was no longer just an elegant gathering of the elite. It was a stage, and Keller was standing under the harshest possible spotlight. He could feel the weight of every gaze in the room, the shift in energy. The carefully controlled spectacle he had planned had slipped from his grasp, and now it was something else entirely. He flipped through his notes, fingers fumbling, trying to find his footing. But there was nothing. Nothing that could counter the unexpected turn this moment had taken. And Barron knew it. "You know," Barron mused, casually scrolling through his phone, the air around him disturbingly relaxed. "I took the liberty of looking into your recent article on toxic masculinity in politics." Keller blinked rapidly. Barron looked up, eyes glinting like a predator who had already won the hunt but was still deciding how long to draw it out. "Written the same week you were caught bullying female interns at your network." The gasp that followed was collective, a sharp inhale that spread through the crowd like a slow-burning realization. And then, the screenshots, right there, in front of everyone. Text messages, internal complaints, accusations of condescending, dismissive, degrading behavior toward young female employees. The kind of revelations that couldn't be spun, couldn't be excused, couldn't be edited into something else. Barron held the phone up just long enough for the message to be seen, to be understood. "Tell me," he said, his tone almost casual, almost amused, "is hypocrisy a job requirement at the new standard, or just an unfortunate side effect?" Keller was unraveling. His mind raced, grasping for an exit, for a counter, for something. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Then, he tried, desperate, grasping, reaching. "I believe in accountability," he began, his voice thin, weak. Barron cut him off. "Perfect," he said smoothly, his expression unreadable. "Let's talk about your accountability." And then, another swipe, another receipt. The room, already tense, braced itself. A morning email from Keller's own inbox. Subject line: "Need rage bait content by 5 p.m. Target Trump family for maximum engagement." The murmurs of the crowd turned to something else. Disgust. Recognition. The kind of sound that signified understanding. Keller's face drained of color. Barron met his gaze, his voice steady, unfazed. "I have those screenshots too," he said. The statement was straightforward. But it wasn't merely a statement. It was a choice. A final chance for Keller to determine just how deep this would go. The crowd shifted, the power dynamic having completely turned. A few people chuckled, not out of amusement, but at the sheer, undeniable irony of it all. Keller visibly trembled. "This is harassment," he attempted weakly, his voice cracking under the weight of his own reckoning. But no one was buying it, and everyone knew. He had already lost. Reason for the changes, Barron's laugh sliced through the charged air, sharp and unmistakable. "Harassment?" he echoed, his voice tinged with incredulity, a hint of amusement. but not quite. Then his expression shifted, his eyes, cold with something dangerously close to contempt, locked onto Keller. And then, the hammer fell. Like sending paparazzi to follow my 12-year-old cousin, the room stilled, or like publishing my sister's home address. Each word landed with the force of a wrecking ball, stripping away the last fragile threads of Keller's credibility. The crowd murmured in shock. Someone in the back whispered something under their breath. A few exchanged glances, expressions shifting from fascination to something closer to disgust. Keller's career was crumbling in real time, and Barron wasn't finished. He tilted his head slightly, studying Keller the way a lion might regard a wounded gazelle, as if considering whether it was even worth continuing. Then he spoke. "You know what the real story is here?" he said, his voice smooth, effortless. He gestured toward the audience, toward the silent, captivated room. "It's not about my mother. It's not about my family." He let the moment breathe. Let them wait. Then his voice dropped, low and steady, but carrying the weight of a storm rolling over the horizon. "It's about a failing industry." Silence. "About journalists so desperate for clicks," Barron continued, his voice dark with certainty, "that they've abandoned every principle of truth." The words landed. The final blow. Keller opened his mouth. Nothing came out. His throat bobbed. His hands twitched at his sides. But there was nothing. No prepared statement, no counterattack, no desperate attempt at damage control that could reverse what had just occurred. The crowd erupted into thunderous applause. Keller turned. Then, without a word, he ran. Not walked, not exited with forced dignity. He pivoted on his heel, his movements frantic, nearly stumbling over himself as he shoved past guests and bolted for the doors. Barron didn't watch him leave. He had already moved on. Instead, he turned back to his mother, his expression softening. Melania smiled, pride gleaming in her eyes as she studied her son. The quiet force of him, the way he had just dismantled a man in front of a room full of the world's most powerful people without ever raising his voice. "You knew he was coming for us, didn't you?" she asked softly. Barron grinned. "2 weeks ago," he said with a casual shrug, slipping his phone back into his pocket, "when he started following our social media team." A pause. "So I followed him back." Every single one of his accounts. By morning, the video had gone viral. Barron exposed his media trended worldwide. Keller's network crumbled. Journalists everywhere double-checked their tweets, their emails, their entire careers. And in newsrooms across the country, a new phrase was whispered with a mix of fear and awe. "Did you get Barron Trumped?" And that was the moment everything changed. Was just another night for Barron Trump. This isn't just a story about Barron Trump. It's about truth, accountability, and standing up to hypocrisy in the media. Have you ever witnessed someone manipulate the truth for their own gain? Or have you seen someone unexpectedly turn the tables in a way no one saw coming? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about the power of truth and integrity. If you believe in exposing hypocrisy and standing up for what's right, hit subscribe now. Don't miss more eye-opening content that challenges the narrative.